Hey, good morning and welcome back to the Collision Hub World's Fair and Exposition. Hey, this morning we talked about crucial conversations and how to interact with our customers. Well, guess what? We got the keys to our customer's vehicle, and now we're going to start tearing this vehicle down a little bit and building our repair plan a little bit more solidly. So with us this morning, we've got Scott Van Hooley from iCar from the Repairability Technical Support website, and we're going to talk about completing the pre-estimate research. But before we get into that, I want to have Scott tell us a little bit about the Repairability Technical Support website and the initiative in general. Tell us a little bit about RTS.
Well, we started it back in 2014 because the industry was asking us to help fill in some of that information gap that's out there, because the OEMs have been putting a lot of information, but it wasn't always necessarily complete the way the collision repair industry needed it, and there was oftentimes a lot of questions or things that might be missing. So the industry came to us and asked us to help fill in that gap. So we started the RTS website, and it's evolved quite a bit since we started it. So we'll go through a lot of the different things that we do in the website, and the website's designed to help you do your daily work, and we shouldn't be your only stop, but we should be your first stop.
Sure.
Because we're going to help you get to the information, find what information you need to do further research on, and help you find that information to begin with.
Awesome. Now, who can access the RTS website?
Well, normally there's gold class facilities, platinum technicians, and people have taken training with us up to, it's 4 hours of training a year. They automatically get access. In response to COVID, we've actually opened it up to the entire industry, so you don't need to log in to access any of our features.
Okay.
But that's going to the end of the year, and we may extend it further. We're working on what the timing will look like and how long that would go.
Okay, so as part of the iCar Industry Relief Initiative, we'll open up that, which I think is fantastic that we build it. But there are certain areas that were available for free regardless, correct, before that?
Yep, so there's a lot of different areas we'll go through. Our collision repair news articles, the OEM information pages. A lot of that information was at your fingertips, the glass section of the website. But the things that we spend thousands of hours researching, those were behind the login, because it's a lot of work to keep all the different searches that we have on the website updated. Because the OEMs we always talk about checking that repair procedure before you do the repair. They change them, we have to go in, find out the change, go and update it, and make sure that we're staying it current on ours. And so if there's, like calibration's a good example. When all the ADAS features first came out, we found a lot of changes from when we first did it.
Yeah.
So we actually pulled them down until we could go through and re-verify all of the records. So if you come across one that's not currently published, just submit that Ask iCar inquiry, which we'll go into that in a little bit, and we can actually do the research on the part that you're repairing. We're not going to be able to provide the entire vehicle, because a lot of times we'll get questions on, I'm working on a 2020 Lexus IS, and they want all the calibration. No, are you taking the bumper off, the fenders? What are you working on? Because then that tells us what we need to research. We can get you that answer a lot quicker.
Now, one thing you said I think is a great point. So it's not the only place you got to go, but it's a great starting place. And you know what a big fan Collision Hub has been of the RTS initiative since day one. And I know Kristen has said many times, like, hey, I start every morning off with RTS. Honestly, I do the same thing now, and now that I'm not there anymore with you every day, I still like to fire it up and see what's going on, look at the articles that are there. So, okay, so now we've got our vehicle. Again, we've captured the keys, and we're going to start working on this vehicle. So we've got a GMC Sierra Denali 2500 HD here. So let's use that as our vehicle to kind of go through some of the features on the RTS website. So why don't we take a look at the RTS? So it's rts.icar.com?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And so what's the first thing we want to look at?
So one of the first things that we get a lot of questions on is people are looking for OEM position statements and things like that. They're really trying to find the documentation. So we've actually put together a section for the website for each of the vehicle makers, so that we can kind of have that all in one place for you. So you're not looking all these different websites, these different areas to actually find the information you need. And one of the first steps, as we mentioned, is the OEM repair information. All the OEMs have completely different websites. It's not always easy to navigate if you're not used to it. We're in these manuals every day, and we got sick of answering the question of how do I find the information. So we put together these videos. We'll actually go through how to purchase a subscription, and then how to access the collision repair information. And we have some other articles around the ADAS systems and things like that, how to get to that information as well.
I really think that that's one of the whole website's valuable. That's a huge component, because I find myself too, like, where the heck is this? And I'll come back here often and listen to you, and we go through the step-by-step instructions and know exactly where I need to do, where I need to type, where I need to click, what I'm looking for, and that really helps streamline that whole process. So rather than spending 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour or longer trying to find out where the information is, I come to RTS, oh, it's step 1, step 2, step 3, boom, I'm right where I need to be. I love that.
Well, and it's especially helpful if you're say a Chevrolet dealership, you're used to working in GM's websites, you're used to going and access that information, but all of a sudden a Honda Civic comes in and you don't know how to access anything. You could spend a lot of time not be able to find it, or a Nissan or any of the vehicle makers, if you're not used to it, to know what it's called, where it is, how to get to it. There's a lot to it, so that's why we have these videos available.
Yeah, so we can watch a video, or there's, again, printable step-by-step instructions as well to download and put in a binder or whatever you want to do as well. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so what else we got on the GMC website here?
So the OEMs have shared different documents with us. So in this particular case, GM has the Repair Insights, which is a magazine they put out, and we'll often do articles around it, but sometimes there's little tidbits. They go through different vehicle structures and different collision repair related things in there that are extremely valuable. So we like to have those available to everyone. We also have position statements, and that's there for convenience, but remember, it's not about just the position statement. It's also it's reinforcing what's in the repair information.
Yep.
So we get a lot of questions around that, and it's always, I need the position statement. Well, here's the position statement, but did you know it's also in the manual? If you start looking at these different procedures, it'll list out what needs to be done.
Yeah, we get a few of those inquiries ourselves. So
Yeah.
so a lot of people love those positions, and they're a very valuable resource, but it's not the only piece that you need.
Yeah, and it's to direct you to the repair information, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. And so every time I speak in one of these things, I always like to bring that up and just reinforce that. There's also some other links to the GM technical documents, and we have their repairability matrix on this one, the GMC videos, and those are anything that have videos that we've done around GMC. So if we did a 360 video or anything like that,
Tell us
those will be there.
what's a 360 video?
So a 360 video is where we'll take a vehicle like this and we'll do a quick walk around it. So it's a 3-minute video or so, 3-4 minutes, and we just take you around. We look at the structure, we look at the ADAS on it, anything that might be unique on that vehicle, just to kind of give you that real quick awareness. I was surprised at the response from the industry. Everyone really seems to like them because it just gives them that real quick overview to help them kind of understand what that vehicle is all about.
Yeah, I love the 360 videos because it gives you that overview. Hey, it's got ultra high strength steel here, it's got some mild steel here, maybe some aluminum, carbon fiber, what ADAS features the vehicle might be equipped with. So I think it's just a great kind of overview of the vehicles itself, not necessarily the one that's in front of you, but at least you know what you might run into on those.
Yeah, and so it just gives you that real quick overview, so you kind of know, okay, I'm going to run into something I haven't seen before.
Sure.
And I need to make sure I research that, especially the first time I'm working on that vehicle, to really understand what's going on.
Awesome.
And then one other section of this web page I really like to point out, everyone's talking about ADAS and calibration, so that button actually will take you to all the articles we've written on GM vehicles and calibration and ADAS.
Okay.
So you don't have to do all these kinds of searches and things like that. You can actually just come here, scroll through it, and you can see a lot of the articles we've written. And these articles are a great one. It's a calibration tip. So as we've been going through the calibration research, we find something that, okay, this was different than we've seen before, something that you could easily overlook. We'll do one of these articles to let everybody know what's going on and where it is and what you need to pay attention to.
Another thing I really like about the articles, a lot of them are fairly short. They're digestible. They're not multiple page long articles. It's just a quick read. I can get the information I'm looking for, and then I really enjoy getting the emails with a recap of the articles that were published in there, so I can just kind of scan. So if I'm not here every day, which Krista and I are, but if I'm not here every day, if I get that email from you, I can at least say, okay, I want to check this article out. And I also like you look at the Twitter feed, correct? That's how you launch that as well on those?
Yep, so when we publish an article and it goes live on the site, we'll also tweet it. So if you're following us on Twitter at ask_iCar, you can get all the tweets anytime we come across an article that's either something we found interesting that might have a technical piece to it, or if we publish an article, we'll also tweet it then.
And tell us, so I know one of your generations for articles really comes from your OEM linking pin activities. That's one thing we didn't really cover in the intro, so tell us about your OEM linking pin activity, what that is and what that means and what it means to the industry.
So the OEM linking pin, that is where we can go and reach out to the OEM directly and get a response on a technical question. So if you have a Kia in the shop, and you're wondering, they sell that whole, floor area with the rear rails, and it's all one big assembly. And we've already had a question of, well, what if I have damage in front of that? I can't separate it out like it is in the manual. What do I need to do? We send in the linking pin to the OEM, and they actually came back with a procedure on how to install that, and you ended up having to take off both quarter panels, both inner quarter panels, in order to put that in. So you basically took the whole rear end of the car off. But that's the kind of level of detail these OEMs are now providing that they were not able to in the past. But we reach out to them with questions for clarification, different procedures, if they can do different procedures on things. And depending on the level of complexity of the question and the OEM, response times vary.
Sure.
Some OEMs are faster at responding than others.
Yeah.
But if they can get an answer, they definitely will. I know we've been talking a lot about SRS and some of the inspection items. Something like that is going to take longer, a lot more people involved. It has to go through legal. So that might be several years process, where if you have a question on this exact vehicle, we typically can get a fairly quick answer on it.
Yeah, which again I think is another great tool through the RTS initiative is that linking pin, because it really gives the technicians or the estimators or the shops or the insurers or whomever you're dealing with a way to kind of communicate through RTS to the OEM. And as you mentioned, some repair procedures have been developed because of those requests, and that's never existed before, which I think is really cool.
Well, and a lot of the times when we go into the OEM repair procedures and people are asking questions, we like that to filter through us, because a lot of times that information exists.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that when we ask an OEM a question, it has been researched thoroughly. My team will look through it, then it comes to me. I'll go through and do some further research. I'll ask more questions. And the biggest thing I got to tell people, pictures, pictures, pictures. I need close-up pictures, but also give me some geography.
Sure.
If it's all right here and I can't tell if it's the underneath the car or a lower rail, I can't really ask the question. And so the better pictures, the better you tell that story, the better response time we can have, because we don't have to call you 3 times and ask you for pictures and send it back and forth until we get pictures that tell the story.
Sure, sure.
So just like when you're estimating, if I can't tell what it is, how am I going to estimate what it is if I don't even know what part it is?
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go with some of the other features. What do you want to start with first?
So we can, we kind of talked about the collision repair news already. Like we said, these are all technical articles. We go over them. We do about 3 a week at least. Sometimes there's more depending on what's going on. But these are going to be very short, very technical, to the point. We don't get into a lot of the other articles that get out published in the industry, any of the politics or anything like that. It's just technical.
No fluff. We're just going right to the technical.
Yep, and it's 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs is getting a little long. We want you to be able to read this in a minute or 2, get some valuable information and move on.
That's awesome. Okay.
So we'll start with calibration search because it's on top of the list.
And this is, I as you know, I love the calibration search tool.
Yes, this one is it takes quite a bit of research on these.
I bet I saw. Yes, it does.
We go through quite extensive documentation, and the people we got working on it, they spend a lot of time doing the research, and they are meticulous, and they have a lot of conversations because, okay, does this system tie in with this sensor? Does this sensor affect the system? We're going into the OEM procedures, the owner's manual, their sales website, and try to piece it all together because they don't always line up.
Yep.
And so a lot of times we have questions. So we're going in depth to make sure we get the right information to you guys.
Okay, so we've got our Sierra, HD in here, and what's that look like? Now this isn't going to give me this truck, correct? This is going to give me what I might run into on the vehicle.
Correct. So it's not VIN specific, where it's going to eliminate all the options you don't have or only include the options you do. It's going to be any possible option on the vehicle.
Okay.
So we click that blue link. One area of the web page I like to point out to people are these links on top. So these ones are going to be how to use the OEM requirement search, calibration requirement search. So we kind of go through what the methodology is, how we have things named. So if you're ever questioning how to use it, you can go right here.
It's your online tutorial for how to use your online tool.
Yep, right at your fingertips. The system definitions. So basically, the OEMs have over 400 names for these different vehicle systems.
All?
And counting.
Yeah.
And even though there's only about 15,
Sure.
there's always a different spin on it, and it's hard to know what it's called.
Sure.
It's even worse for sensors because there's only 7 types of sensors or so, sensors and cameras, but there's over 400 names for all those.
Yeah. Which again, I love the streamlined approach here of like, let's group these, let's call them a generic, a general kind of name that you guys have already defined, and then what the OEM calls it, but I'll let you cover that part, sorry.
Yeah. So the iCar names, so these little Monopoly cards, they're always going to be the same color no matter what vehicle you're on.
Okay.
So if you're on a GM or a Honda, you're going to see these same colors for these same types of systems.
Okay.
So it's a quick reference. And
It'd be nice if the OEMs would standardize that for us, wouldn't it?
Well-
We'll work through your OEM linking pin. We'll work on that.
theirs is always the best way.
Yeah.
Everyone should just adopt their way.
Well, there's a good point.
And that's one of the struggles is because there's so many different
Yeah.
engineering departments out there, and there's so many different things that are, so many different factors that are really putting pressure on them. So
Okay.
it's always hard to get them all to line up, but on some things they're starting to.
Awesome.
So as we said, the OEM name is going to be under the system name that we've named.
Okay.
So it gives you that real quick reference. So when you're in that repair information, you know what to search for. Because if
Okay.
you don't know what it's called, you're not going to find it.
So if I look for a 360-degree camera view in the GM information, I might not find it. But if I'm looking for surround view camera, I'll get what I need potentially.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then we also will list out all the cameras and sensors that feed into this system. So the industry, when we developed this page, we had a lot of debates on this of how we should set it up, because really it's about the sensor or
Yep.
camera that's been disturbed. But the industry was always talking about
The system.
the system. And so we built it both ways.
Okay.
So you can see the different cameras and sensors involved, and if the system will turn on a mill light or set DTCs. And that's always not the clearest, that's about as
Wait,
clear as
I
mud.
thought if there's no light in the dash, there's no problem.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That is one of the biggest misnomers that we're always combating.
Are we getting better? Are we getting
I
there?
think we're getting better,
Okay,
but we
good.
still get the question.
I know, that's awesome.
So if we look at this vehicle, it has, for the 360 camera, you're going to be the mirrors, the windshield. Most likely we would not be pulling the windshield on this one. But if we have the collision warning, we just see, okay, this one has a camera near the review,
Okay.
and there might not be a radar sensor on this one
Okay.
because it was obliterated. We might not know if it was on there or not.
Okay.
But because we don't see it here, for the collision warning, collision braking, it looks like they're just using that camera in the rearview mirror.
Okay.
So let's say the windshield did have to come out on this because of the work we're doing. If you click on that, so we'll list out again the OEM name for that camera or sensor. We'll give you the calibration
So again,
events.
like kind of like the name. So if I do it's not going to be. I know forward-facing camera is a common term, but GM doesn't use that. They're calling it the front view camera. So again, if I'm looking for a forward-facing camera, I might not find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and one OEM even called it a front television camera.
Oh, okay.
So unless you're looking for a TV camera, you're probably not going to find it.
Got it.
But then we'll also go through the different calibration events. So this is really the real meat of this web page, because you can spend a lot of time looking for this stuff only to find out it's plug and play. There is no calibration.
Got it.
Or there is a calibration event that you have to actually go and calibrate something and you'd miss it.
Okay, so if we go back now to our process that we're talking about, our kind of our pre-estimate or our estimating process, again, if I'm rather than scouring through thousands of pages of OEM information, I can come in here, put my Sierra 2500 HD truck in here, and you know what? The glass is damaged. Am I going to have to replace that if the glass is broken?
Yep.
And
So
then I can put that in my repair plan.
Yep.
I can plan for it accordingly, know if I'm going to have to take it, whether it's a static calibration, dynamic calibration. I'm not at that point yet, but this kind of let me know that at least, you know what? We're taking the glass out, or we're taking the camera out, or the sensor's damaged, or whatever. We're going to need to calibrate it. This is what that's telling me.
Yeah, so a lot of times we get ones on the park view sensor. People will ask questions on that, and typically they're plug and play. There might be an operation check they have to do, but there's not a lot of calibrations, and people have looked for 4 hours
Yeah.
for a calibration to make sure they didn't miss it, and if they came to the website, they would have found it in just a few minutes.
Okay.
And know that, okay, no, there's no calibration required.
Okay.
And if there is any kind of special note, we'll put that on here as well. But then this also is another thing I like to highlight, is we will tell you what systems use this camera or sensor. So if you're having a problem with multiple systems, you might only have one problem. You could have more, but this will kind of help you guide you in that kind of guided fault finding a little bit higher level, just to know that, okay, if I have a problem with all these systems, I might want to start right here. And then we'll also go through if there is a calibration, if it'll set to DTC, if a scan tool is required, or if there's special tools required.
Okay.
So typically on GMs, a lot of times they're dynamic, so there's not the special tools like the stands and targets, but other vehicle makers vary. So we'll kind of call that out as well, so you can do the research and find out, okay, do I need to take it to the dealership, or can I just do it in-house with a remote vendor or whatever our process is.
Okay. Or if there's not a scan tool required, like on the Honda Lane Watch system, where you can do it on the dash, let you know that as well. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the next area that we're going to go to is the partial part, and this is really, it's again meant to be that real quick tool, just to help you find that information quickly, so you're not spending all kinds of time. Now you can see there's a lot of Sierras on here.
Yep.
But if you do a broad search like I did, where I didn't put in the year, you can also filter all these columns just by clicking on them. So it doesn't stand out much, but so if you do a broader search and you want to bring something to the top, it'll filter it ascending and descending just like an Excel document.
Okay.
So on this particular one, we'll go in here. And again, we have the same kind of links up on top. And we can go through and we'll tell you how we did the research and all those things, just like we did in calibration.
Okay.
This is going to be a pretty high level. It just real quick tells you, okay, is there a sectioning procedure, partial part at a factory seam, and just so you know that, okay, if I can't find that part, I might have to go to full part replacement.
Okay. So again, during my repair planning, it's not going to give me the procedure, but I can go like, you know what, the damage is just at the end of the rail. Is there a section procedure? No, there's not. Okay, now I can plan for a full rail. Or yes, there is. Now I need to find out exactly where that is, but at least I know, can kind of head down that repair plan.
Well, and I know on this particular one, it's especially important to look it up because on the 1500 for the front frame horns, you can do them individually. On this one, they only have a procedure to do them together.
Okay.
So same kind of truck, but yet the 2500 and 1500, there's some differences that you have to pay attention to on that. So the OEM restraints, this is basically a real quick list of all the replacement and inspection items that you have to go through after an airbag deployment. And this is something that's actually provided to us. So let's see here. So there's a lot of different options there, but it's just that real quick list. This kind of information is available at other locations, but we wanted to have it here as well. So if you're
already here, right?
You're already
so I might as well
here.
use the tool.
It's at your fingertips. We can go.
So give me the disabled procedures, disabled procedures and the wait times, and then again what I need to inspect for.
Yep.
And what if the airbag's not deployed?
So they'll have that as well.
Okay.
They'll go through all that, just the inspection items, and it varies from OEM what they have in there.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of consistency there either.
Okay, and later this afternoon we're going to do a required inspections following a collision presentation, and we're going to be using the same truck, so be sure to come back for that one at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
And then if this was a hybrid vehicle, if they had an option for it, we would just come in here and we'll just pick a different vehicle real quick. So well, they do have a hybrid, but I bet you it's older.
Yep.
Yep, so 2018.
Okay, and what's that look like? Okay.
So again, our quick search things on top to help you find that information, but then we'll also have how to access the disabled procedure. So originally we had this, we would have the first responder guide to how to disable it, but there's so many safety things with all these high voltage systems. We're just taking you right to the OEM information, step by step how to get to it.
Well, I love this because this is a great way to not kill yourself. So that's a very helpful tool.
It's a bonus, yeah. So we also will tell you if the scan tool is required or if a high voltage DVOM is required.
Okay.
And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't understand is you can't just take your multimeter over and check it because it'll burn it up real quick.
Okay.
And then we'll also tell you where the battery is located and where the high voltage disconnect is and the 12-volt battery, because going through the repair information, they'll have an extreme close-up of it, but no geography.
Okay.
And you don't always know where it is. And
Got it.
we've had plenty of people call us up and go, where is this thing? And we direct them here, and we've done the research to help you out that way. And then we go through any of the welding precautions for it, which typically you have to isolate both 12-volt and high-voltage battery before you weld, just as a best practice. And then if there's any refinishing precautions you have to make on that vehicle.
Okay. Okay, very good.
So No, we're getting down on time here, I think, a
No,
little
we're
bit.
good. We're good.
We're good?
We're good. Yeah. So let's go to our OEM glass. So again,
Okay.
the glass on here is not damaged, but again, our scenario already was we've got some damage to the glass. We're going to replace it. We know we're going to have to calibrate the forward-facing camera. So what's in the glass installation?
So the
piece?
glass one, we did it by OEM. So the OEM information pages, you saw it as individual makes. This one we've grouped GM together, Honda, Acura, all the ones that can be grouped are grouped.
Okay.
And this is just something the glass industry came to us and asked us, we come in there and we're trying to find out what needs to be done on this vehicle, how the pinch weld flange is supposed to be prepped. We don't have a good way to get to that information. So we put this together as a quick reference for them to know adhesive, flange prep, those kinds of things. And we've also
epoxy primer, paint,
Yeah.
clear, how far do I go? Okay.
Yep, because there's all a little bit of variation of what they've tested and what will work for each vehicle. And then we also have gone into each of these and we've added some of the common camera calibration events and things like that.
Okay.
So that, when the glass company's in there, they know they have to do that additional research. So it's just that real quick reference for them to know that, okay, we probably, if we have something in that mirror, in the mirror on the windshield, we're probably going to have to do something else with it.
All right. Now, what's this next? Let's do your best practice here, and then we'll come back to our Ask iCar to kind of.
Okay.
So, what are iCar best practices? Because you guys are developing procedures. Wait, how does that work?
No. We're
Okay.
not developing procedures. So these are industry vetted best practices. So even though it says iCar on it, we've gone to the industry to create these. So what we do is we identify an issue in the industry, and we will then gather up industry experts, and we'll have a repairability summit. We'll talk about the different issues. We'll bring in all the research that we've done on it, and we'll develop these best practices, have everybody review it. After the meeting, we'll then take all the notes from the meeting, add it to whatever the proposed best practice would be, and then we'll send it out to everybody that was invited to the meeting, even if they couldn't come, so they could still put input into it. And then once it's gone through that process, we publish these best practices. And my favorite one is the full body sectioning should not be done.
Hard to believe you have to do a best practice on that in 2020, isn't
Well, we were seeing it so much on social media that we said, well, that was probably one of the shortest repairability summits we ever had.
it? Yes, it was.
Because we just had to say, hey guys, here's what it is, what we think, the reasons why, and it was pretty much unanimous instantly. I think we maybe tweaked a word or two, and that was about it. So the OEMs have been saying it for years, but we didn't think we needed to, but obviously we needed to come out and say, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's again, people going back to the 1980s general sectioning guidelines to apply it, and amazing, for whatever reason we can't convince people otherwise. They keep going back to that. But
Yeah.
you said that you bring in industry experts. What type of people would be invited to a repairability
So
summit?
it'll be collision repair professionals, insurance companies, OEMs, tool and equipment makers, whoever can add value to that conversation from a technical aspect. So again, we're not going to come out with any kind of a political kind of position statement. It's technical information. How do we fix this vehicle correctly, safely, get buy-in from all the parties, and then that's how we develop that best practice.
So it's truly an inter-industry developed and vetted best practice. It's not just Scott and Danielle came up with this cool procedure.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, they won't let me do that.
They won't?
No.
Not even Danielle?
Oh, definitely not Danielle.
Okay.
There's sometimes I wish I could because it would just be so much easier, but it's just not how we work. So.
And I think that's important, though. I really do, because I think that people don't recognize and appreciate just how much of that inter-industry activity does go on. That again, it's not just a small group of people getting together, but you're bringing in all parties of the industry to talk about these issues and to come up with them. And I know the rolled hem flange on recycled quarter panels and why it doesn't make sense to do it, and creating a weaker joint and corrosion protection issues and everything associated with it. Again, you've got something that you can now stand on and go, look, this is not a good repair. It's not a complete, safe, quality repair. We're going to have issues with it on these rolled hem flanges. So I think those are some valuable tools that people can turn to.
Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of conflict in the industry a lot of times, but when it really comes down to it, it comes down to data. And if you can provide the research behind it, and here's the reasons why we can't do this or why we can do this, a lot of times that takes a lot of it away, but it takes time for everybody to get on the same page. And so as much as we want to wave our magic wand, we can't do that. We got to work together and make all this kind of stuff happen. Okay. And we've been pretty successful at it. COVID put a little damper on it, but I think we're going to attempt a virtual one in the not too distant future. So the industry will be able to participate in that one, and it'll just be interesting how to manage all the cameras.
And where do these best practices, how do they start? Like, where do these come from? Again, is it something that you're getting feedback from the industry to say, like, hey, we really have an issue here, or is it something that you're running? How does the best practice development start?
Typically, it's feedback from the industry. So we'll be getting a lot of questions on something. The rolled hem flange was one we were getting constantly, and others. We observe something and go, okay, full body sectioning should not be done. We know it shouldn't be done. Okay, let's get everybody together. Yep, we got the consensus. So even on one that easy, we still brought everybody into a room. We talked about other things on that one, but we still brought everyone in, made sure we had buy-in to make sure that we weren't missing something.
Okay. All right, and let's talk, you already talked about iCar 360 videos. Let's talk about Ask iCar. And let's submit a question. Let's see if Susan's paying attention today.
Okay, we'll do that. So Ask iCar is really, it's a mechanism that is there for the industry to ask the questions when they can't find something, they're confused on something, and after they submit one of these, that's when it'll trigger that linking pin process. If we can't find the answer to it, then that's what will trigger it. But a lot of the Ask iCar questions have developed things on the website because we get sick of answering the same question over and over again.
Yep.
We don't want to waste your time or our time answering a question that is already available to you. And so that's where a lot of the searches and things like that have been developed from, is to answer these questions. So you don't have to ask iCar.
Yep.
You can go to those searches, get that information at your fingertips in a few seconds, as opposed to waiting for a response.
Now, you said something, I think that's a real key to it, is if you can't find it.
Yes.
So I shouldn't just go like, hey, I have a question, I'm going to send Scott an email.
Yeah.
We should do some research first of all, and then if you can't find that answer, and I think that's a huge component of it, because again, you've got other things to do. But that's the thing I really like about the Ask iCar and the search, is once you've got the question, that if I've got a question, chances are Kristen and Larry and Mark and everybody else might have that same question. So you share that with everybody rather than try to answer that 50 times.
Yep, and so we'll actually publish them to the website, so you can do a search by year, make, and model, or subject. But if you've gone through that, you can't find it.
So let's use our truck here again. So we've got our 2500, it's a 2020.
Yep.
So again, you may have not got a lot of questions on that yet. So are there any GMC Sierra 2020 HD questions on here?
Well, we have one already keyed up and ready to go, because we're looking at the front module here.
Yep.
And we know on the 1500 they have one for the complete module. There's a lot of different repair options.
The front end module.
Yep, the front end module. So we're going to just submit a question to see if it's the same or if there's one available.
Okay.
Because that's not something we could find in one of the searches or anything like that, because it doesn't get to that level of detail. But before I spend a whole bunch of time looking for something I don't know if it exists or not, or if the 1500 is fine, we can submit it.
Okay, so we've got my contact information in here. We've got our question that reads, we have a 2020 GMC Sierra HD. Is there a section procedure available for the front end module, the same as a 1500 module? So,
yep.
Okay.
So, and one thing I ask when people, if you're asking a vehicle-specific question, tell us the vehicle you're submitting on.
Okay.
We get a lot of them. We'll just come in, can I section this? No make, no model, no year.
Okay.
So that changes a lot of things when all of a sudden you have a 2020 or a 2010. That's going to change the response quite a bit. So if you don't have that in there, it's going to take longer, because now we're going to have to email you back, ask you the question. And if you can provide the VIN, on some vehicles we require it, because it just makes it researching that much quicker.
Okay.
BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and GM, we have that requirement on them. But if you just throw it in the details, that helps us too.
Okay.
So we go through and we can submit the question.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
all right, so let's just know that it has been submitted and that somebody is going to be researching that for
yep.
us.
And typically, if you submit an Ask iCar inquiry this way, it'll take about 2 hours at max during normal business hours.
Okay.
We try to be as fast as we can.
Sure.
If your question you can't figure out how to say it in an email, you can call us, but our preferred method is the email, because that way you're not sitting on hold waiting for our availability. We can respond to it quicker. You can move on and keep doing your research on the vehicle you're working on instead of sitting on the phone on hold.
Okay. So your 2 hour thing, you made a commitment to the industry that, hey, we're going to get back to you within 2 hours, and at least let us know that, hey, we've got your question, we're looking for the answer, we haven't found it yet. And then what happens after that? What if you guys don't find something?
So if we don't find any information or we can't answer the question, that's when we'll send you a separate link that will initiate the OEM linking pin process. So In that email, it'll have the inquiry number that you put into the form. You fill out the form, upload your photos, any other documentation, PDFs, anything that you've looked at, and then you can submit that to us and we can do that further research for you.
Okay.
And then eventually submit it over to the OEM.
Okay, very good.
So there's quite a few things with the Ask iCar that, we're not going to sit there and we can't give you procedures, we can't send you procedures, but we can help guide you to it.
Sure.
So typically we respond with something where there's actually, okay, they do have a sectioning procedure for it. We'll have the link to the video for the step-by-step instructions. And then if there's any articles we've written or anything like that, we'll also tie that into that email. So you have that all right in your fingertips.
Okay.
And then you can put all that information into your documentation for
Okay.
that file.
Now, one thing we didn't cover on the website here, Scott, is this quick search by vehicle. What exactly is that?
So quick search by vehicle is something that everyone wants to put in a VIN and have everything magically come up. We haven't gotten to that point. We want to get there yet, but we haven't gotten there, so we came up with this quick search where we can do it by vehicle. So on this particular one, we can do the GMC Sierra 2020, and we do the search, and now it brings up all the different searches that we have in one spot for that vehicle. So you got your partial part, your calibration, restraints, all in one location, so you don't have to keep doing all the separate searches
Okay.
to find the information.
So if I'm just looking for something specific on one, I can go there, or I can just do the entire vehicle right off the bat. Now, one question, can we go back to the Ask iCar again from the submission standpoint? I think I saw something there for, what's this New Zealand here? What's this Hyundai? And what about like Canada? Is that covered as well?
So any of the Canadian technicians or estimators that submit things, we can answer it. It's all based on US vehicles.
Okay.
But Canada and the US are pretty closely
Very similar,
aligned.
okay.
Yeah, so they might have a couple of vehicles we don't have here, but that's pretty rare.
Okay.
So we handle all the Canada questions that come in. Where our counterparts in New Zealand, we set up a link, so if any of their people show up here, if they're from New Zealand, they can click that link. It gets them back to New Zealand to submit the question over there.
Okay, so iCar New Zealand through the Collision Repair Association, you guys put Robert Remick to work, and they have to do some, and Neil have them do some research.
Yep, they
Okay.
can, and they can answer because they have a lot more makes than we do. So.
Okay, and then what about Hyundai? You've got Hyundai here. I see.
So that came from the Hyundai collision repair questions, where Hyundai didn't have repair procedures. They've now released limited repair procedures, but they have them. So that was part of our effort to really show the industry that, okay, show Hyundai, here's what the industry is looking for on a daily basis. So we would compile them and send them over a database of, here are all the questions we're getting on what vehicles we're getting questions on, so that they can have the data to go back to the mothership and say, here's the questions that the US is looking for. This is why we need procedures. Because even though Hyundai didn't have repair procedures for quite a while, they were still using all those
they
mixed
had
materials.
them, they just didn't have them in North America,
Yes.
but they were also available in other markets.
Yeah, and so we didn't have them here. We needed them because they had all that mixed material and all the advanced high-strength steels that we were using on all the other OEMs. So it was extremely critical for us to actually get that information from them.
Okay.
And so, they did their due diligence, and they had to build the story to Korea and say, here's why we need to release it. The industry is needing it. They can't fix our vehicles correctly without it. And so there's a lot of people that worked very hard at getting that information published. And so there's going to be more coming, and I'm not sure of the timeline. They're hopefully going to be coming out with some more soon.
Okay, but I think it's just want to congratulate Scott and the RTS team, because the Hyundai and even the Kia, if we go back a few years ago to Kia, when Kia didn't have collision repair information available, I got to watch firsthand the efforts that Scott and team made to compile all that, and that goes back to your OEM linking pin, right? It was a relentless pursuit of, we need this information, we need this information, we need this information, and again, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you've finally been, we're successful with it, and kudos to you and the whole crew for that. That's huge. I don't think that anybody can really appreciate how much time and effort you spent personally in your professional career just trying to get the answers to those questions. I think that's awesome. I'm super happy about that.
And one of the oddest things about it is that Kia is now one of the easiest ones to deal with. If I have a question and I send them a linking pin, they're typically pretty responsive.
Yeah.
It has to usually go over to Korea if it's something for engineering, but like I said, they'll come up with sometimes procedures on how to do different things, they've been great to work with. So, you know, it's not that they don't want to, it's just they have to get
they weren't able to at the time.
Yeah, they have to get the corporate machine to understand what's needed, make the case for the industry, and then now they've been supporting and they've been fantastic with it.
Yeah, and they've got good information. They've got material identification, repairability guidelines, sectioning, I mean, they've got everything you could possibly want in a body repair manual, and it's just now that's becoming available now. So that's cool.
And I remember when I started at iCar, Steve Marks had kind of started with Kia at working on that, and he had a PowerPoint that laid out all the things that you know, you need for collision repair, and they came pretty close to matching what Steve had in that PowerPoint all those years ago. So
yeah, and you know, interesting to kind of tie that back to your best practice development. What we need that Steve had presented to Kia was based on best practice development, where we brought the industry together and said, okay, what does an ideal body repair manual look like? And those are the things: material identification, glass requirements, and Kia and Hyundai have really kind of hit the nail on the head with that. And so we've got a response here from Susan around our 2500. Essentially what it's telling me is that although the procedures are different, so we can't use the 1500 procedure, there is a procedure for the front end module for the 2500 as well. So thank you to Susan for that. And then again, we can now go into the General Motors collision repair information and find that procedure and fix our front end module on here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, you can't assume that one vehicle to the next is the same, because even though it looks the same, it has the same looking front end module, there are differences. There is I know that there's a different document ID for that as well. So those are the kind of questions we can help answer. We can guide you to that information, and all that information that comes in there, you can put it right in the repair file.
Awesome. You know, and speaking of we'll kind of segue into a little bit about a future presentation we're going to be doing. We actually, General Motors and Tradie Bot Industry and Collision Hub teamed up for a video on the 1500 front end module replacement, and we're going to have the world premiere of that on Wednesday. So we're looking forward to that. But again, a little bit different procedure, but there is a procedure available. So again, thank you, Susan, for getting us that information. So Scott, anything else you want to talk about around RTS or anything iCar related that you think is worth sharing?
You know, I think, you know, come to the website, use it, and if you don't like something, you can always suggest it in the Ask iCar, and it'll get to me, because I love that people love it, but I also want to know what they don't like, what they want to see improved. In the future, we're talking about a lot of different things. If you get a survey, if you fill it out, that's a huge help, because, you know, let us know what you like and what you need, because then we can start to build it.
Okay.
If everyone just says it's great, that's all well and good, makes me feel warm and fuzzy, but it doesn't make me get the website to be even better.
And I really admire that. That again, it was designed by collision repair professionals for collision repair professionals, but that you and the team are always looking for ways to improve upon it. So I really appreciate that. So, well, awesome, Scott. I really appreciate you making the trip down here. You had a long ride yesterday and a long ride back home, but we're glad that you're here. We're glad that iCar's participating in this. And again, you know how much the Collision Hub team loves repairability technical support website. Kristen, we have any more questions coming in at this point?
No, I think we're good.
All right, we're good on the questions. So again, Scott, thank you for your time. iCar, thank you for your time and continued support. We're going to be back at 2 o'clock for the OEM research process. We're going to talk about using OEM information to kind of build that repair plan a little bit more. 4 o'clock this afternoon, we're talking about inspections required for collision. We're going to talk about some different avenues, including RTS, around some of the required inspections for our 2500 pickup truck here. And again, I want to encourage you to visit the collisioneducationfoundation.org website and make a donation. We've got our first donation. We have our first $50 donation. So thank you to, I believe it was Tony. Thank you for your donation to the Collision Repair Education Foundation in support of current technical schools and colleges. So again, collisioneducationfoundation.org. $50 gets you that technician shirt. So until 2 o'clock, we'll see you. Everybody have a great lunch, and we'll be